The ice sheet cracked beneath Xen'dari's weight, and she knew she was going to die. The storm had driven her toward this frozen wasteland 3 solar cycles ago. Now her ship lay shattered somewhere beneath the endless white, her crew scattered or dead. The cold pierced through her thermal suit, designed for the moderate climates of her homeworld, not this death trap of a planet. Her skin, normally a vibrant pattern of deep violet and azure bioluminescent markings, had faded to dull gray. Ice crystals formed on her chitinous shoulder plates. Her hands trembled as she pulled herself across the frozen surface, each movement an agony. The triple suns of her home system felt like a distant dream. She collapsed into a drift, too exhausted to continue. The wind screamed around her, burying her in white. Perhaps this was better. A quick end in the cold rather than the slow death that waited if her enemies found her first. At least here, alone on this hostile world, she would die free. The darkness came gently, like sleep. Jonah Pritchard hadn't expected to find anything alive on his morning rounds. He'd been checking the perimeter fence of his research station when he saw the shape in the snow. At first, he thought it was debris from a satellite space junk fell to Earth more often than people realized. But as he approached, his breath fogging in the Arctic air, he saw the unmistakable curve of a limb. Not human. Definitely not human. The being was partially buried, its body covered in what looked like segmented armor, though closer inspection revealed it was organic part of its skin. The face, what he could see of it, was angular and alien, with large eyes closed beneath translucent membranes. Patterns covered its skin, faint swirls and geometric designs that might once have glowed. Jonah made his decision in seconds. He dug frantically, clearing the snow from around the body. It was lighter than he expected, the bones perhaps hollow or the musculature different from human anatomy. When he pressed his gloved hand against its chest, he felt the faint flutter of something that might be a heartbeat, rapid, irregular, but there. "Okay, friend," he muttered, stripping off his outer parka to wrap around the alien. "Let's get you inside." The research station was a 10-minute walk, but Jonah covered it in 7, the alien cradled in his arms. Its head lolled against his chest, and he could feel how cold it was even through his layers. Inside, he laid the being on the examination table in the medical bay. The station was designed for 6 researchers, but Jonah was alone this rotation, a blessing now, given what he'd found. No bureaucratic delays, no committees to debate first contact protocols while this creature died. He cranked the heat as high as it would go and began carefully removing the remnants of what looked like a thermal suit. The material was advanced, some kind of adaptive fabric, but it had clearly failed against Earth's Arctic temperatures. Beneath it, the alien's body was a revelation. The bioluminescent patterns he'd noticed covered most of its skin, running in intricate channels along its limbs and torso. Its body was humanoid in the broadest sense, 2 arms, 2 legs, a torso and head, but distinctly other. The shoulders were broader, with chitinous plates that looked like natural armor. Its fingers were each tipped with what might be retractable claws. The skin itself was smooth but tough, somewhere between human flesh and reptilian scales. Jonah worked quickly, warming the alien with heated blankets and monitoring its vital signs, or what he hoped were vital signs. The scanner picked up multiple cardiac chambers, faster respiration than human baseline, and body temperature far below what he assumed was normal. "Come on," he whispered, adjusting the heat lamps. "Don't give up on me." Hours passed. Jonah dozed in a chair beside the table, jerking awake periodically to check on his patient. Around midnight, he noticed the faintest return of color to the alien's skin. A flicker of dim blue light traced along one of the patterns on its arm. By morning, its chest rose and fell with stronger rhythm. Xen'dari woke to warmth and terror. Her survival instincts kicked in before conscious thought. She rolled off the surface beneath her, landing in a defensive crouch despite the weakness in her limbs. Pain shot through her body, but she ignored it, scanning the room for threats. Not her ship. Not anywhere she recognized. The space was small, filled with primitive equipment, and there a being, tall, bipedal, with pale skin and hair the color of dried grass. It was holding up its hands, making soft sounds. A native. She was in the hands of natives. Easy, the being said, though she couldn't understand the words. Its posture was non-threatening, hands open and empty. "You're safe. You were freezing to death. I brought you here." Xen'dari's translator implant was damaged, providing only fragments. "Safe. Brought here." The tone was calm, almost soothing, but she knew better than to trust that. The collective had seemed peaceful too, before they'd declared her people enemies of their empire. She assessed her situation rapidly. No weapons within reach. Her own body was weak from cold exposure and starvation. The native was larger than her, but its body looked soft, unarmored. She might be able to overpower it if necessary, but it had covered her with warming blankets, had removed her damaged thermal suit. The room was heated to almost comfortable levels. Why would a threat do that? Please, the native said, moving slowly to a counter and picking up a container. Water. You need water. It poured clear liquid into a transparent vessel and held it out, approaching no closer than arm's length before setting it on the floor and backing away. Xen'dari watched him retreat, then cautiously approached the vessel. She sniffed. Water. Yes, slightly different in mineral content than what she was used to, but her species had evolved to process a wide range of liquids. She drank deeply, the cold liquid soothing her parched throat. When she looked up, the native was sitting on the floor, maintaining a respectful distance. It smiled. She recognized the expression from her xenobiology training, a gesture of friendliness among many species. Jonah, it said, pressing a hand to its own chest. Jonah, a name. It was offering its name. Xen'dari, she rasped, her vocal cords struggling after days of disuse. She touched her own chest with her clawed hand. The native Jonah smiled wider. Xen'dari, okay? We'll figure this out. The days that followed fell into a cautious routine. Jonah quickly learned that Xen'dari was omnivorous but with different dietary needs than humans. She couldn't process certain proteins but thrived on others. He shared his rations and was surprised when she eagerly consumed the dried seaweed supplements he'd been avoiding. The translator implant in her head began working better as it adapted to English. By the third day, they could have basic conversations, though her speech was still halting and heavily accented. Why you help me? She asked one evening as they sat in the station's small common area. She'd stopped crouching defensively in corners, but she still startled at sudden movements. Jonah considered the question. Because you needed help. What else would I do? Many things. Her bioluminescent patterns pulsed slightly, a display of emotion he was learning to read. This pattern meant distress or painful memory. Leave me. Report me to authorities. Trade me for reward. There's no reward for you, Jonah said gently. And even if there was, I wouldn't take it. You're a person, not cargo. She stared at him with her large, faceted eyes, compound eyes that could see wavelengths he couldn't imagine. You are strange, Jonah Pritchard. Probably, he agreed. More coffee? He'd discovered she enjoyed the bitter taste, though caffeine had an opposite effect on her biology, making her sleepy rather than alert. She nodded, holding out her cup with those clawed hands that he'd noticed were surprisingly dexterous. Over the following weeks, Xen'dari grew stronger. The bioluminescent patterns on her skin brightened, pulsing with emotions she was learning to share with him. Blue meant contentment. Violet indicated curiosity. Deep red was fear, which he saw less often as time passed. She told him about her world. Xen'dari was from a planet called Vel'nai, located in a star system far beyond human exploration. Her people, the Vel'nai, were traders and explorers. She'd been commanding a diplomatic vessel when they'd encountered the Collective, a militaristic empire that viewed all non-member species as potential slaves. We refused to submit, she said one night, her patterns glowing dark crimson at the memory. They attacked. My crew, I ordered them to scatter. I drew the pursuit ships away, hoped the others would escape. That was brave, Jonah said. Was foolish. My ship damaged. Navigation failed. Crashed on your ice world. She looked at him. Should have died. Would have died. You saved me. I'm glad I found you. The statement seemed to surprise her. Her patterns flickered through several colors before settling on a soft golden hue he hadn't seen before. Why? Because the world's a better place with you in it, he said simply. Winter deepened around the research station, but inside, warmth grew. Jonah taught Xen'dari about Earth, its cultures, its history, its vast diversity of life. She was fascinated by everything, asking endless questions about oceans she'd never seen, forests that existed only in his descriptions, and the billions of humans who lived in places far from this frozen wasteland. In return, she shared knowledge of the galaxy beyond. She spoke of crystal cities that grew like plants, of gas giants where floating civilizations harvested resources from the clouds, of the vast network of species that traded and communicated across the stars, all unknown to humanity in its isolated corner of space. Earth is beautiful, she said one evening, watching the aurora borealis through the station's reinforced windows. The green lights danced across the sky, and her own patterns seemed to echo them in gentle waves of color. Cold, but beautiful. "It's not all like this," Jonah assured her. "There are warm places, tropical islands, deserts that bake in the sun. You'd probably like those better." "Perhaps." She tilted her head in the gesture he recognized as thoughtfulness. "But this place is where you found me, where I lived when I should have died, is special." The statement hung in the air between them, weighted with meaning. Jonah had been avoiding thinking about the future. Eventually, his rotation would end. Other researchers would arrive. The secret of Xen'dari's presence would become impossible to keep. And beyond that loomed larger questions. Was her ship repairable? Would her people search for her? Was the collective still hunting her? "What will you do?" he asked quietly. "When spring comes, I mean, when we have options again." She was silent for a long moment, her patterns cycling through colors. Finally, they settled on that golden hue, the one he'd learned meant trust, affection, something like happiness. "Don't know," she admitted. "Ship is destroyed. Even if I could call my people, bringing them here would risk exposing Earth to collective attention. Your world is not ready for that." She looked at him directly. "What do you think I should do?" "I think you should stay," Jonah said, the words emerging before he'd fully thought them through. "Not here at the station, necessarily, but somewhere on Earth, somewhere safe. If you want to, I mean, you'd be welcome." "With you?" "Yes, with me." Her patterns blazed bright gold, pulsing in waves across her skin. "I would like that, Jonah Pritchard." The emergency radio crackled to life at 0300 hours, shattering the quiet peace of the station. Jonah jerked awake and stumbled to the communications bay, Xen'dari close behind him. She'd insisted on learning the station's layout, including emergency protocols. Now her body language radiated tension, her chitinous shoulder plates flaring slightly in the defensive posture she still adopted when threatened. "Repeat, this is Collective Enforcement Vessel Cormath. We are tracking a fugitive that crashed on your world. Under Galactic Treaty Article 7, we demand the immediate surrender of the criminal Xen'dari of Vel'nai. Respond or face consequences." Xen'dari's patterns went dark, all color draining from her skin. "They found me." Jonah's mind raced. The message was in English, which meant the collective had studied Earth enough to communicate. They were announcing themselves openly, which meant they either didn't care about exposing themselves or believed humanity couldn't resist them. "How many ships does the collective typically send for a pursuit?" he asked. "For one fugitive, one enforcement vessel. Small crew, 6, maybe 8 soldiers." Her hands clenched. "More than enough to take this station. To take me." "Jonah, you must answer them. Tell them I am here. If you resist, they will kill you." "Not happening." "You don't understand." "I understand perfectly." Jonah moved to the equipment locker and began pulling out supplies. "They're hunters. You're not cargo, and this is my planet." "Jonah, how long do we have?" She hesitated, then checked the scanner display he'd taught her to read. "Based on signal strength, perhaps 1 solar cycle, 1 day." "Then we have time." He looked at her. "Do you trust me?" Her patterns flickered through uncertainty before solidifying into that golden hue. "Yes." "Good. Because I've got a plan, and it's probably crazy." The collective ship landed exactly 24 hours later, setting down on the ice half a kilometer from the research station. Jonah watched from the window as 6 figures emerged, moving with the confident precision of trained soldiers. They wore environmental suits that made them look insectoid, but he could see the weapons they carried, advanced technology that would turn his body to ash before he could blink. The lead soldier's voice boomed from an external speaker. "Jonah Pritchard of Earth, we know the fugitive is inside. Send her out and you will not be harmed. Resist and you will be eliminated as an accomplice to her crimes." Jonah activated his own external comm. "What crimes?" "Xen'dari of Vel'nai refused lawful incorporation into the collective. She destroyed collective property while evading arrest. She is guilty of insurrection against authorized authority. So she refused to be enslaved and fought back when you attacked her." "Got it." Jonah kept his voice steady. "She's requested asylum. I'm granting it under Earth's authority. Leave peacefully and there won't be trouble." The soldier's laugh was harsh. "Your world has no authority we recognize. You are an uncontacted species, unaware of galactic law. We will retrieve our property." "She's not property." "Final warning, human." "Yeah," Jonah said. "Mine too." He pressed the detonator. The charges he'd planted around the landing site exploded simultaneously, not close enough to damage the ship, but positioned to crack the ice sheet beneath it. The surface fractured in a spiderweb pattern, and the collective vessel lurched as the ground beneath it became unstable. The soldiers scattered, seeking solid ground, and that's when Xen'dari moved. She burst from the station's emergency airlock, fully equipped in a cold-weather suit Jonah had modified to fit her physiology. In her hands, she carried two of the most dangerous things on Earth in the Arctic flare guns. She fired both simultaneously. The emergency flares streaked toward the ice field Jonah had spent all night weakening, the chemical heat igniting on impact. The ice didn't just crack, it shattered, huge sections breaking free and tilting into the frigid water beneath. 2 soldiers went into the water immediately. The others scrambled back, and in their panic, they made the fatal mistake of clustering together. Jonah had studied the ship's design through his telescope. He'd noticed the heat venting pattern, the way exhaust was channeled. Now he activated the station's emergency beacon, overriding its usual distress frequency to broadcast a high-intensity pulse on the wavelength he'd calculated would interfere with the ship's systems. The collective vessel's engines stuttered, just for a moment, just long enough. The ice beneath it gave way completely, and the ship tilted, then slid with terrible finality into the broken channel of Arctic water. The remaining soldiers stared in shock as their vessel disappeared beneath the ice, taking with it their weapons, their communication array, their way home. Xen'dari approached them, still holding the spent flare guns. She spoke in her own language, and her translator projected the words across the ice. "I am Xen'dari of Vel'nai. You hunted me across the stars. You found me. And now you are stranded on a world that does not want you, where the dominant species has just proven they will fight to protect their own." The lead soldier's environmental suit crackled. "The collective will send more. By the time they arrive, Earth's governments will know about you, about the collective, about your methods." Jonah's voice was hard. "Xen'dari has already uploaded everything to a dozen servers. The secret's out, and I promise you, humanity doesn't react well to slavers." "What will you do with us?" another soldier asked, and for the first time there was uncertainty in the voice. "That depends," Jonah said. "Drop your weapons. We'll get you inside before you freeze. Then we'll talk about asylum applications, because despite everything, we're not murderers. Unlike some." One by one the collective soldiers disarmed. The weeks that followed were chaos in the best possible way. The first government helicopters arrived 3 days after Jonah sent his encrypted report to every major nation simultaneously. He'd included Xen'dari's documentation of the collective's practices, video evidence of the attack, and a detailed first contact proposal that emphasized humanity's need to present a united front to the galaxy. For once, the nations of Earth agreed. The threat of an expansionist slave empire had a way of focusing priorities. Xen'dari became the unofficial ambassador for humanity's first contact with galactic civilization. The collective soldiers, faced with a choice between cooperation or imprisonment, chose to provide intelligence about the wider galaxy. Their enforcement vessel was eventually recovered from the Arctic water, yielding technology that would revolutionize human science. But through it all, Jonah and Xen'dari remained anchored to each other. "You changed my world," she told him one evening as they stood outside the new facility that had replaced the simple research station. Spring was coming to the Arctic, the first hints of thaw in the air. "You changed everything." "We changed it," Jonah corrected. "You're the one who brought the stars to Earth. I brought danger, war, complexity. You brought hope." He took her clawed hand in his, no longer startled by how different it felt. "And friendship, and proof that we're not alone. That's worth any complexity." Her patterns glowed golden, so bright he could see them through her clothing. "Your people have accepted me, given me a place. But you, Jonah Pritchard, you gave me a home when I had nothing. You risked everything." "Not everything," he said quietly. "The world where you didn't exist, I risked nothing I'd want to keep." She pulled him into an embrace, her chitinous shoulder plates careful not to press too hard against his softer human frame. He wrapped his arms around her, feeling the steady rhythm of her multiple heart chambers against his chest. Above them, the stars were coming out, brilliant in the Arctic twilight. Somewhere up there, the collective ruled through fear and force. But here on Earth, in this moment, 2 beings from worlds light years apart had built something they couldn't destroy. They'd built a family. "Will you stay?" Jonah asked. "I know they're offering you ships, the chance to find your people. My people are here," Xen'dari said firmly. "You are my people, Jonah. This cold, beautiful world is my home now, if you'll have me. Always. Her patterns blazed bright enough to illuminate the snow around them, a living aurora more beautiful than any natural phenomenon. And when Jonah looked into her faceted eyes, he saw reflected there every color of hope and belonging. The galaxy was vast, full of wonders and terrors they were only beginning to understand. But here, in the place where she'd nearly died and he'd refused to let her go, they'd forged something that would withstand any challenge. They'd proven that compassion transcended species. That home was built in moments of choice, not blood or birthplace. That one person's decision to save another could change the course of worlds. The stars watched, and the earth turned, and in the warming Arctic night, two souls from different worlds held each other against the darkness. They were safe. They were home. They were family. And that was everything. If you have enjoyed the story, tell YouTube to send you more stories like this by subscribing to this channel, liking the video, and leaving a comment.